And that's how visibility often works in this space. It's not just one viral post, and it's not through one marketing campaign. It's through repeated exposure over time. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts workplace mediators need to make. I'm Sylvie Garibaldi, founder and CEO of a well-established marketing training and done-for-you services company, tailored specifically for the modern legal and financial professional worldwide. While it's taken some trial and error to figure out which methods get the best results for professionals who are looking to grow their practices, fast forward to today, my team and I have nailed down and perfected a process that has helped so many of our clients consistently achieve outstanding results and create a legacy for their practices. I created the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast to give you simple, actionable, non-salesy, and results-driven marketing to grow your legal or financial practice like so many of our clients have. If you're a lawyer, mediator, financial, or divorce professional who is looking to become highly visible and wants to create a practice that makes an impact, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to episode 124 of the Serve First, Sell Later marketing podcast. I'm your host, Sylvie Garibaldi. So one of the biggest mistakes workplace mediators make is assuming that good work eventually speaks for itself. And in reality, unfortunately, invisible expertise rarely gets hired. And so what we see here at SG and Associates as we work with many workplace mediators all across the globe, and one of the biggest patterns we see is this. Many exceptional mediators are barely visible to the HR leaders and CEOs who actually need them. And meanwhile, these professionals are dealing with increasing workplace tension every single day. There are CEOs and leaders who are dealing with communication breakdowns, leadership conflict, burnout, difficult personalities, psychological safety concerns, emotionally exhausted teams. And so when these situations escalate, HR leaders are not simply looking for someone with credentials, they're actually looking for someone that they can trust. Someone who feels safe, calm, credible, thoughtful, and experienced enough to step in as a neutral into sensitive situations without making things worse. And that's why visibility matters so much in workplace mediation. And it's not visibility in the influencer sense. I'm talking about trusted professional visibility, the kind where HR leaders, CEOs, they start to begin to recognize your name long before they ever need to call you. Because today, trust is often built much sooner than that first conversation ever happens. And that happens for workplace mediators primarily on LinkedIn, through webinars, through educational content, through association events, and through thoughtful conversations and consistent visibility that happens over time. So I'm really excited about today's episode because I want to break down exactly how workplace mediators can become more visible to leaders in a way that feels authentic, professional, and trust-based. And of course, without feeling overly promotional or sales-driven, because in this field, visibility is not really about attention, let's face it. It's about becoming the person that CEOs and HR leaders think of when the stakes are high. Okay, so let's dive right in. So why does this visibility gap happen in the first place? I think this is a really important place to start because most workplace mediators were trained to become excellent practitioners, excellent at conflict resolution, not necessarily visible professionals. And there's a big difference between the two. Most mediators are very thoughtful and very well-trained professionals. They care deeply about neutrality, about professionalism, about confidentiality, and really about doing excellent work. But I think the challenge is that these HR leaders and CEOs and other key leaders, they can't hire expertise that they never see. And so when we work with workplace mediators, One of the biggest things we notice is that many are relying almost entirely on referrals and word of mouth. Now, don't get me wrong, referrals absolutely matter. But today, even referrals are being validated online. So, what do I mean by this? Well, if you've been following this podcast, you hear me talk about this a lot. So, let's break this down for workplace mediators. What does this look like? Well, an HR leader hears your name and they immediately check your LinkedIn. They check your website. They read your content. Maybe they attend some of your webinars. Maybe they're listening to any podcast appearances or YouTube videos or other interviews that you may have done. And they're trying to answer one question. Does this person understand the kinds of workplace situations that we are currently dealing with? This is where many mediators unintentionally become too vague in their marketing. And they say things like, I help resolve workplace conflict. But HR leaders are thinking much more specifically than that. They're thinking about maybe a toxic leadership dynamic, or maybe they're thinking about in a government setting what this communication breakdown looks like, or maybe for educational institutions. What does a difficult employee situation look like in educational institutions or in hospital settings? Okay, so all of these things are very specific. And these are the things that leaders are looking for. And so the mediators who become visible are usually the ones speaking directly to those realities. And I have to say, it doesn't happen in a fear based way and it's not very dramatic, but it's in a way that allows these leaders to feel understood. Because ultimately, visibility isn't really about marketing, it's about relevance. It's about helping these leaders quickly recognize this person understands the kinds of problems that we are facing here at our organization. So, what does this actually look like in practice? How does a workplace mediator even become visible to these leaders at these organizations without feeling like they're constantly marketing themselves? And I think the first shift is understanding that visibility today is built through education. It's educational marketing. It's not promotion. It's workplace mediators gaining traction right now are not necessarily, as you would say, the loudest people online. They're the ones consistently helping other professionals think through problems that they are currently facing. Okay. And LinkedIn has become one of the biggest opportunities for this because leaders in HR, CEOs, and other leaders, they're already on LinkedIn. They're reading, they're watching, they're paying attention, and they're following conversations specifically around conflict, leadership, communication, workplace culture, retention, burnout, employee well-being, all of these things. And this is where many workplace mediators underestimate the value of thought leadership. And so thought leadership is not about trying to sound impressive. It's simply about helping people think more clearly. So, for example, instead of posting, I'm a workplace mediator available for organizations, you might write about what unresolved conflict actually costs a team, why difficult conversations get avoided in organizations, or how early intervention can prevent workplace situations from escalating. And I can tell you that, here at SG and Associates, we write social media for many workplace mediators. So we understand the types of pain points and problems that these leaders, either CEOs, HR leaders, what they are currently facing in their space right now. And those are the sorts of things that you need to write about to start building thought leadership in this space. Now, I will also say this. We know that on LinkedIn, there are many lurkers. I refer to them as lurkers because there are more people on LinkedIn who actually just read than post. In fact, that number is approximately 6%. 6% of all LinkedIn active users are actually posting on LinkedIn. Okay, so let that set in for a moment. that presents a huge opportunity for you to start writing about thought leadership on LinkedIn in a way that will get attention because most people are not posting on LinkedIn. It's mostly what I would call a lurker environment. They are reading, they are educating themselves. Some are actually liking your post, many are not. They're simply just reading. But that doesn't mean that you should stop. That means you should continue because there is an active audience that is reading, listening, and watching. So, your content on LinkedIn for thought leadership really needs to answer questions long before anyone reaches out. And honestly, this is one of the biggest shifts happening right now across professional services. People increasingly build trust through consistent exposure over time. And as I mentioned, it could be a LinkedIn post. It could maybe even be a webinar. Maybe it's a podcast interview. It's a conversation in the DMs. These are all small touch points, okay, that begin building familiarity and trust. And over time, that visibility compounds. I want to share something with you that I see come up time and time again. Many professionals I speak to know exactly who they want to attract, but where things break down isn't clarity, it's actually implementation. So they're not sure how to translate that into messaging, how to stay visible, or how to turn that visibility into actual client inquiries. So if this sounds familiar, I created a step-by-step guide to help you work right through this. This free guide walks you through how to define your ideal clients, identify the right referral partners, understand where they're actually looking, including AI, and most importantly, how to turn all of that into consistent action. You can download your free guide at www.sgandassociates.ca/free-guide. Link is also in the show notes. All right. So, one of the most underutilized strategies for workplace mediators right now is actually relationship building on LinkedIn. I'm not referring to posting and I'm not referring to algorithms. I'm actually referring to relationships. And we can speak to this pretty clearly because this is a service that we deliver to our clients and we understand it very well. This is something, as I said, that we spend a lot of time helping our clients with because many opportunities don't start with someone filling out a form on your website. And I don't know if that's a surprise for you or not, but they do begin with conversations. And this is especially true when it comes to CEOs and HR leaders, because it's really a relationship driven world. People are often hiring professionals that they feel comfortable with, people that they've interacted with, people that they've seen consistently, and people who feel approachable and credible. And I think this is where many workplace mediators miss a huge opportunity. So they connect with owners, HR professionals, CEOs, and they do this on LinkedIn, but they never actually build the relationship. And so they never comment thoughtfully on their posts. They never start conversations in the DMs. They never do follow up. They never engage outside of posting their own content. And I think that this is important to understand because LinkedIn is not just a content platform, it's a relationship building platform. And some of the best opportunities come from simple conversations in the DMs. Now, I want to be clear here. There's no pitching, there's no selling, just genuine professional conversation. So maybe you reach out after an HR leader posts about burnout or workplace culture, or maybe you share an article. Maybe you compliment a webinar that they hosted. Maybe you ask a thoughtful question in their post about a challenge organizations are facing right now. These are all small touch points that matter more than people actually realize because over time, familiarity starts to build and trust starts to build. And so when workplace conflict eventually escalates inside an organization, and unfortunately it does happen more than we like to think it does, we want your name to be familiar to them. And so how do you do this? Well, if you've already built a level of professional trust before that crisis ever happens, then you're going to be the first person or one of the first people they turn to. And honestly, that's how many professional relationships are formed today. They're done quietly in the background, but they're done consistently and through ongoing conversations over time. And not through aggressive marketing, but really through this type of generosity and relationship building. So we do this for workplace mediators, where we help them build relationships with CEOs, with HR leaders, to different organizations that may be interested in their services. And we actually do this through the DMs, and we've had huge success in booking appointments for workplace mediators. Okay, another strategy that's working extremely well right now is educational webinars and workshops. I think this makes perfect sense when you think about it, because CEOs and leaders are constantly trying to navigate difficult people situations inside organizations. But many of them, quite honestly, are also trying to prevent conflict from escalating in the first place, because they want better communication. They want stronger leadership conversations. They want earlier intervention. They want to prevent people from leaving the organization. And so webinars create an opportunity for workplace mediators to become educators around those conversations. And we've seen firsthand how powerful educational events can be for professionals, because they allow people to experience how you think, not just what you do. And that's a very important difference. Anyone can list credentials on your social media, on a website. And, when a CEO or a leader spends 45 minutes or an hour learning from you as a workplace mediator, something changes. You're no longer just another name online. They begin hearing your approach, your communication style, your perspective, and your professionalism. And I really believe that in mediation work, those qualities matter tremendously. Some of the best webinar topics for workplace mediators are not overly technical. They're very practical. So here are some examples. So topics such as how to address workplace conflict before it escalates, or why employees avoid difficult conversations, or the hidden cost of unresolved workplace tension. That's another big one. Communication breakdowns inside leadership teams, and sometimes those signs are very quiet. So, for example, someone stops participating in conversations, right? That's a communication breakdown. Psychological safety in high stress workplaces. These are all excellent topics. And these are the kinds of conversations that leaders are already thinking about every single day. And the workplace mediators who consistently educate around these issues begin positioning themselves very differently, not just as mediators, but as trusted resources. And quite frankly, one webinar will probably not change your entire practice overnight, but consistent visibility over time with ongoing webinars and workshops will change how people perceive you, and trust will compound, and recognition starts compounding. And so the professionals who stay visible in an educational way are often the ones that HR leaders and CEOs remember most when those difficult workplace situations arise. And another authority asset that's becoming increasingly powerful for workplace mediators is podcasting. Now, hear me out on this. I'm not saying that every workplace mediator needs to run out and start a podcast tomorrow, but I do think that podcasts are becoming one of the most effective ways that professionals can build trust at scale, because mediation is such a relationship-driven field. People are not just evaluating your credentials, they're evaluating how you think, how you communicate, how calm you sound, how thoughtful you are, whether you feel grounded and emotionally intelligent. And audio is a very powerful way to communicate those qualities. So, one of the things we've noticed is that long form content creates a completely different level of connection than short social media posts. So, when someone listens to you for 20, 30, 45 minutes, they begin feeling like they know you. And that matters enormously in workplace mediation, because particularly CEOs and HR leaders, they're always asking themselves, would this person handle a sensitive situation professionally? Would employees feel comfortable speaking with them? And could this person navigate tension without escalating it and be neutral in all of these situations? And so a podcast gives people a chance to experience your communication style long before they ever meet you. And so you don't need a massive audience for this to be valuable, right? This is a very niche market as a workplace mediator. In professional services, it's not about creating a podcast that's going to reach millions of people. That's not the reality. It's about reaching the right people consistently. And so every guest appearance on podcasts can be incredibly valuable for workplace mediators. You don't have to have your own podcast. You can actually appear on the podcasts of others. And it allows you to speak out about maybe psychological safety, communication breakdowns, leadership conflict, burnout. And so over time, these conversations begin building authority and familiarity because today, many professionals are quietly building what I call authority assets around their expertise. So, what are these authority assets? Podcasts, webinars and workshops, newsletters, right? These are all key places, long form content. And so these assets continue building trust long before they're created. So, for example, long form content is a book, it could be a long form guide. That is something that stays with people for a longer period of time. And so, one of the biggest shifts happening right now in professional visibility is that people increasingly trust professionals that they already know. And it's important to make sure that you're out there becoming known in your space. Okay, if this is you and you're listening to this and thinking this all makes sense, but I'm not sure how to actually implement this in my own practice, then please book a strategy call with me. I'd be happy to discuss what's working right now and how one of our services might be able to help you. So if this is you, you can find a link in the show notes to set up a strategy call. So this leads into one of the most important things workplace mediators need to understand about visibility. It's not about trying to become famous online. It's about becoming recognizable and trusted within the right professional circles, because workplace mediation is ultimately a trust-based profession. So CEOs, HR leaders, they're not choosing mediators the same way that someone chooses a restaurant or buys a product online, right? I think we can all agree to that. So they're making very careful decisions around super sensitive workplace situations that can affect employees, leadership teams, culture, retention, and even legal risk. And because of that, trust gets built differently in this profession. It gets built slowly through repeated exposure, repeated education, repeated professionalism. This is one of the biggest patterns that we see here at SG & Associates, is that the workplace mediators gaining the most traction are usually not relying on one single marketing activity. They're building what I would call an ecosystem of visibility. So someone first discovers them through LinkedIn, maybe it's through a post, then they attend one of their webinars, then they listen to a podcast episode or an episode where you are a guest. Then they see them speak at an industry association event, maybe it's an HR association event, then has a conversation with them in the DMs. And by the time a workplace issue actually arises inside their organization, that mediator already feels familiar and trusted. Does that make sense? That's a completely different dynamic than trying to market yourself only when you need clients. And that's happening a lot. We do see that a lot. However, I think this is one of the biggest shifts happening across professional services right now, and that is how to compound visibility, how to make sure that it's cumulative through these different marketing resources. So trust is becoming cumulative, and the professionals who consistently show up in thoughtful, educational, relationship-driven ways are the ones that are creating enormous long-term advantages for themselves, for their practice. And once again, it's not because they are the loudest, it's because they've become recognizable, credible, and trusted over time. And I also think it's important to talk about consistency, because this is where I think many workplace mediators get a bit discouraged, if I can be honest. They post for a couple of weeks, maybe they do one webinar, maybe they attend one networking event, and then when nothing immediately happens, they just assume the strategy is not working. But visibility in professional services usually does not work that way, especially in a field like workplace mediation, because CEOs and founders, they often don't need a mediator today, but they need one maybe 6 months from now or next year, or suddenly in the middle of a very difficult workplace situation. Sometimes you can't predict when it's going to happen. And this is why it's so important that you have consistent visibility. No matter what you're doing in your business, that visibility needs to be loud and clear so that they can find you whenever they need you. And so this is one of the things we tell our clients all the time is that you're often building trust long before someone is ready to hire you. I know it can feel frustrating sometimes because you don't always see immediate results, but people are watching. They are reading your content. They are seeing your name repeatedly. They are following your perspective, and they are quietly observing how you communicate. And then eventually something happens inside an organization. As I said, once again, maybe it's an employee complaint. Maybe it's a toxic team dynamic. And suddenly that HR leader thinks, I know someone who talks about this consistently. And you're the person they turn to, right? And that's how visibility often works in this space. It's not just one viral post. And it's not through one marketing campaign. It's through repeated exposure over time. This is one of the biggest mindset shifts workplace mediators need to make. They need to stop thinking only in terms of how do I get clients quickly? And instead start thinking about how do I consistently become that trusted resource within the HR and workplace leadership world, right? Because the professionals who stay visible consistently are often the ones who get remembered when those stakes become very high. Okay, so as we wrap this up, I think there's one final thing workplace mediators need to hear. And that is you don't need to become someone that you're not in order to become visible. And honestly, I think this fear stops a lot of very talented mediators from putting themselves out there because they think visibility means being overly salesy or promotional. And it's not, because the most effective workplace mediator does not market themselves aggressively. In many ways, your marketing should actually reflect your mediation style: calm, thoughtful, clear, grounded, professional. And so we often remind our clients that people aren't just evaluating your expertise. They're evaluating your online presence, how you speak, how you communicate, what you say. And especially in workplace mediation, because organizations are bringing you into emotionally sensitive situations. So the way you communicate online matters intensely. The way you write matters. The way you speak matters. The way you handle conversations matter. And HR leaders and CEOs are always asking themselves, would leadership trust this person? Would employees feel comfortable speaking to them in confidentiality? So once again, you don't need to become a social media personality. You simply need to become more consistently visible in ways that allow these leaders to see you and to value your approach. Because ultimately, the workplace mediators who are the most trusted, they're the professionals who consistently show up with clarity, generosity, and emotional intelligence. And I think trust-based visibility is becoming one of the biggest competitive advantages in this field today. So if I were a workplace mediator and I was starting today or trying to become more visible to HR leaders and CEOs and founders, here's what I would focus on. First, I would make sure that my LinkedIn profile speaks clearly to the concerns of this market, right? The concerns of CEOs, HR execs, other executives, and not just to position yourself as a workplace mediator, but really the kinds of workplace situations that you help organizations navigate and the outcomes that you support. I would also select a few core topics to consistently talk about online. I wouldn't talk about everything. I would pick 3 or 4 and rotate them and speak about them consistently. So maybe it's leadership conflict, or maybe it's burnout, or maybe it's communication breakdowns in teams. Like, select a few of them and become the known expert in that space, because you don't need to become a content machine. You just need to create familiarity around a few key topics. And then I would start to intentionally build relationships with these professionals online. And how I would do it is I would comment thoughtfully on any of the company posts. I would follow their work. I would start conversations in the DMs. And I would engage genuinely over time because these relationships are often what create opportunities in this field. And you also want to educate, right? This is your platform to educate. So I would definitely be doing webinars. I would be guest speaking at associations that represent where CEOs would hang out, HR executives, maybe do some guesting on podcasts. So these are some of the key things that I would do if I was first starting out, or even if I was already well established, but I wasn't doing some of these key things. So, one of the biggest mindset shifts that we try to help professionals make is really understand that trust based marketing is rarely about quick wins. Okay. It's about being visible in the right rooms around the right conversations with the right people over time. And so, becoming a trusted name within a very specific professional community will become a huge asset for you. So I want to leave you with this. Good work still matters, but visible good work matters more because workplace conflict is not disappearing anytime soon. And if anything, I think organizations are carrying much more complexity, more tension, and more emotional strain than ever. And so it is these CEOs and other leaders who are actively looking for professionals that they can trust. So just remember that visibility is not about ego. It's not about becoming an influencer. It's just about promoting your services in a way that adds value so that the right people can find you. And educational visibility is a key form of service right now that many professionals respect and admire because they are learning. They are constantly learning. And just remember that all of these posts, webinars, and conversations are cumulative. And it will allow you to become top of mind when an organization experiences some kind of conflict. And quite honestly, I think the workplace mediators who understand this shift early enough are going to create enormous long term advantages for themselves in the years ahead because the future doesn't belong only to the most qualified experts. It will belong to the experts people actually know exist and trust. Thanks for tuning in today. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss future episodes packed with actionable strategies to grow your practice. See you in the next episode.